I tracked 3 Ukrainian cruise missiles entering Russian airspace over the Black Sea at dawn, heading toward a gas terminal on the Krasnodar coast. On the Krasnodar, scopes near Anapa S-400 cruise monitored what looked to them at first like a routine morning. Low sea clutter, no major tracks, nothing urgent. They did not see the threat hiding in the noise. What Ukraine launched that day was not simply 3 isolated weapons. It was a strike designed to overwhelm, confuse, and penetrate deep through every layered air defense system between the Black Sea and that coastal gas terminal. This tactical stroke was perfectly executed. The Russian battery was helpless. The 3 FP-5 Flamingo cruise missiles flew in loose formation 200 feet above the waves. Their composite frames sliced through salt air at 540 miles per hour. Each weapon weighed 13,000 pounds, carrying a 2,500-pound warhead. On radar, though, they looked closer to harmless seabirds than heavy weapons. At low altitudes, planetary curvature turns the surface into a blind zone. The 91N sees acquisition radar sat on a truck 8 meters off the ground. Geometry alone limited how far it could see against low-skimming targets. In my experience, Big Bird could easily track hundreds of high-altitude threats past 300 miles. But against a target crawling at 100 feet, it rarely secures a stable track inside 20 miles. The Ukrainian designers understood this vulnerability. They built the frame out of fiberglass composite layered over a honeycomb core to absorb incoming radar energy and keep the return signature faint. The weapons rode right on the edge of the radar horizon, appearing for a sweep or 2, then slipping back into clutter. On the Russian screens, the operators struggled. I detected Ghost's intermittent returns, flickering through heavy wave clutter. They showed for 2 sweeps, then vanished for 3, constantly drifting from their last position. In warfare, speed telemetry is your only truth. Determine what. But at 7:03 a.m., the hostile targets crossed our system line of sight threshold. Our 91N6E radar locked onto the lead contact. Speed 540 miles per hour, skimming low toward our gas terminal under 20 miles out at missile profile. 8 seconds later, an S-300 battery sector search confirmed it. In our doctrine, seconds are lives. The S-400 commander had 50 seconds to react before the firing window closed. I aligned the 92N6 radar. Narrow beams are precision, locking a target for the kill. But behind that first threat, 2 more hostile signatures broke through. And behind those slower targets, too numerous to count in combat. A commander cannot hesitate here. I did not wait to coordinate with them. I ordered a ripple launch. Our interceptor missiles lit in sequence. Each is 7 meters, 4,000 pounds. Ejected cold from its vertical launch tube before the booster kicked in hard, screaming into the sky. Data links transmitted real-time guidance corrections. Soon their own semi-active seekers would lock onto the radar energy. Then the first warhead detonated within 40 feet of the lead target. Sharp tungsten shrapnel shredded the weapon completely, cutting through vital hydraulic lines and plunging the debris straight into the water. But in warfare, our second missile blinded. The engagement geometry collapsed and the interceptor self-destructed, avoiding a big phantom track we could never catch. 1 decoy down, 2 still inbound. The gas terminal was now less than 90 seconds from impact when S-300 batteries joined, launching their own interceptor salvo at the second decoy. For several seconds, both systems were firing at the same contact, their interceptors, converging on a single radar track that did not know it was already doomed. The S-400 missiles arrived first, scoring a partial hit that gouged the decoy's wing route, and 1 clean miss, as the missile jerked hard near the coast. S-300 interceptors flew into the debris cloud, finding nothing solid enough to destroy. 2 decoys down, $8.4 million in. Interceptors expended reload crews. Still, minutes away, and the third decoy had already slipped past our engagement zone, dropping to sea-skimming altitude with its warhead live. On our scopes track, numbers kept climbing. Several new contacts mirrored those decoys, fast, faint, and flickering. Others crawled at roughly 120 miles per hour, clearly propeller-driven. Some matched nothing in our threat library. Too fast, cheap drones, too slow for cruise missiles. Those decoys were just the opening act. The main strike package was now arriving. The threat tracks of critical concern weren't the smaller targets but two longer, heavier signatures tagged as Hostile 07 and Hostile 08. Russian operators knew that profile. They had trained on it since April 2022, when these sent the cruiser Moskva to the bottom. These were extended-range Neptune missiles. Weapon designers took the original anti-ship frame and asked a simple question: how do we modify this? Why scale up? That added volume was not for payload. It was propellant. The turbojet engine possessed sufficient propellant to project strikes beyond 600 miles, dwarfing the original 175. The payload expanded from 330 pounds to roughly 570, solely because the enlarged airframe could support it without sacrificing operational range. Another critical modification was inside the nose. The baseline. Neptune relied on active radar homing, activating its seeker in the terminal phase and acquiring the largest metallic target on the ocean's surface. The updated variant completely stripped out the radar. Its place. We installed a guidance computer, processing 3 distinct navigation modes simultaneously. GPS updates every second, inertial guidance through gyroscopes and accelerometers, and a fusion algorithm to cross-check and verify all telemetry in real time. If the GPS signal degraded, the weapon would not falter. It simply ceased, trusting it. Targets 07 and 08 penetrated the coastline near Vasilieva, approximately 40 miles southwest of the gas terminal. 2 extended-range Neptunes inbound at 560 miles per hour. Behind 14 slower vectors, one-way suicide drones, propeller-driven but too saturated to ignore. Our S-400 had 6 interceptors left in, ready tubes. The S-300 had 8, 14 missiles on rails, 16 confirmed threats. The tactical calculation was simple. If any threat would inflict catastrophic destruction in the next 90 seconds, it would be those Neptunes. Cruise missiles first, and drones afterward. If there was any afterward, left. Both batteries reached the identical tactical conclusion and fired almost simultaneously. Target 07 sustained 3 impacts, disintegrating above the shoreline. Target 08 was hit as well, though not cleanly. A near miss and a shrapnel cloud heavily chewed up its shredding control surfaces, stripping its paction. Fuselage. The threat plunged behind a low ridge, breaking critical line of sight, just as our secondary air defense inceptor closed in before it reappeared, shedding metal heavily damaged but still airworthy. In attrition, warfare warheads do not care if the vehicle is flawless or burning. Success only requires hitting coordinates. Further inland, a Buk M3 battery monitored this chaos. Its 9S-36 radar painted a fresh swarm of slow targets, clocking 130 miles per hour. Steady, propeller-driven single source. Signatures. Tactical classification was instant. One-way attack drones tube-launched. Drones roughly 12 feet long, folding wings, and 75 pounds of high explosives in the nose. Cheap engines, basic airframes, but their internal guidance was highly advanced. Integrated into each fuselage sat a compact flight computer, equipped with inertial sensors, a multi-core processor running complex navigation algorithms, and a downward-facing camera for visual matching. 10 times a second, the processor scans the ground below, cross-referencing roads, river bends, structures, and fields. The onboard computer compares sequential imagery to calculate displacement and isolate distinctive landmarks against stored digital maps. This imagery comparison yields targeting accuracy down to a few meters under good conditions. When GPS is online, the processor blends satellite signals with visual fixes. If electronic warfare disrupts GPS, system instantly detects the anomaly, noting sudden telemetry shifts that contradict its internal calculation of acceleration, seamlessly shifting execution to local camera tracking and inertial sensors alone. The Pole 21 GPS jammer grid near the gas terminal did exactly what our tech was built for that. Morning. Small transmitters rigged on towers and rooftops broadcast heavy noise across navigation bands, creating a vast zone where satellite guidance became useless against enemy weapons that relied entirely on those satellites. It worked, but against drones that navigated by scanning the ground below, we were only wasting electricity. Our doctrine assumed satellite-guided threats would drift off course and become easy targets for us. But these drones never wavered. They kept flying straight for our storage tanks. Our book commander had 36 interceptors, ready with no way to reload during the fight. Our interceptors were designed to kill aircraft and crews. Missiles, not tiny composite drones. The weapon's proximity fuse used nose-mounted radar to detect target-sized threats entering the lethal radius. Our system's trigger threshold was calibrated for fighter-sized returns. Against a fiberglass tube with a small metal engine, the radar return barely registered what our systems expect from a large bird. Our miss probability climbed. Kill probability plummeted. We still had to fire. 4 missiles left our rails in rapid succession. 1 for each of those lead drones. 2 detonated in exactly the right spot, scattering airframes to fragments. 2 more flew past within lethal range but never triggered. The fuse never registered anything big enough to register as a target. 8 more interceptors followed. 5 hits, 3 drones sailed straight through, untouched. Half their swarm was gone. So were millions of dollars in missiles, burned for a couple $100,000 in cheap Ukrainian hardware, and still 1 damaged Neptune remained inbound. No interceptors engaged after the S-300, near miss 4 minutes prior. For 6 minutes hostile 08 cruised the BL. Krasnodar airspace crippled but still active. Its flight computer registered the trauma, noting degraded roll authority, asymmetric drag, and lost velocity. It recalculated its trajectory. Underneath, the software a Kalman filter ran silently. Every few milliseconds it fused 2 distinct tracking estimates. 1 relying on salvageable GPS telemetry, 1 driven by local inertial sensors. Both inputs held distinct margins of error when electronic jamming or spoofing forced the GPS telemetry to deviate from actual physical velocity. Autopilot immediately downgraded its reliance on external satellite tracking and favored dead reckoning. As weapon entered the Pole 21 jamming, perimeter GPS satellite signals dissolved. Target tracking fluctuated. The filter spotted the anomaly, flagging GPS as untrustworthy and shifted control entirely to internal gyroscopes. Target accuracy drifted slightly but remained tactically viable. A few hundred yards of drift against a 40-plus acre fuel farm still guaranteed a probability of direct impact on target near 100%. Crossing the final ridge, it clocked 490 miles per hour at 300 feet. The Buk radar reacquired the target, but the fire control window had collapsed. Minimum effective intercept range for the 9M317M was hundreds of yards. At that terminal speed, threat would close that remaining gap in under 3 seconds. Tactical reaction time evaporated, leaving only time to observe. Tank 7 sat dead center of the terminal facility, housing a 200 cubic meter vessel filled with liquid petroleum gas. The Neptune struck center mass. The warhead punched through half an inch of steel, detonating internally and turning the tank from storage into a massive bomb. Superheated gases expanded in milliseconds, rupturing welds and spraying burning fuel across 4 neighboring tanks. Tank 9 failed 4 seconds later as the fire rapidly compromised its pressure relief systems. The outcome was no standard explosion. It was a boiling liquid expanding vapor. Detonation sending a fireball into the sky, 200 feet high, visible from Buk, positions miles away. The tank farm's distribution racks were already gone in the initial blast. Rail lines and pump manifolds feeding the terminal were torn, open, dumping raw fuel into a spreading firestorm. The remaining drones arrived as the pressure vessels heated up. These systems lacked the yield to destroy intact tanks with a single strike. Their 75-pound warheads targeted softer assets, instead hitting transfer manifolds, pump houses, exposed piping, and control systems. Each strike started another fire precisely where the terminal engineers never wanted flame to reach. Tank 12 flashed over and failed. Then 15, then 16. Later, 24, 25, and 26 ruptured within seconds of each other, creating a massive merged fireball hundreds of feet wide. By 7:20 a.m., 22 of 30 storage tanks were already destroyed or burning uncontrollably. The distribution racks were obliterated. The rail yard was gone. Emergency crews could only secure the perimeter and wait for the remaining fuel to burn out. The gas terminal would burn for 3 days. This wasn't just a tactical fuel strike. It forced the enemy air defenses to reveal their entire operational playbook, only to tear pages out in real time. An S-400 battery and an S-300 battery burned through interceptors worth over $10 million to intercept 2 cruise missiles, yet still, our interceptors failed to stop a single Neptune from hitting its target. A Buk battery had burned through heavy missiles trying to intercept small drones exceeding all our pre-war threat projections, and realized their warhead fuses weren't calibrated for carbon composite airframes that registered on our radar screens as nothing more than wild birds. The Pole 21 jamming grid did its job on paper, denying GPS coverage across dozens of kilometers, but the threats we faced simply stopped relying on satellites navigating by terrain matching instead. From our naval assets to the burning armor, Ukraine dismantled key layers of conventional military doctrine, exposing them as a series of costly assumptions, then bypassed them entirely with a mix of long-range precision strikes and low-cost drones. For tactical commanders watching the detonation on the horizon, the lesson was clear. The defensive systems we trained to operate can still function, but not against these modern tactics, not consistently, and never cheaply.